Believe it or not, college basketball season has already begun, so it's time to tip off our coverage here on CBSSports.com. Hey, how are you, folks? Jason Horowitz, glad to be with you on the first installment this year of Parrish's Three-Pointers, and for that, of course, we bring in our CBS College columnist Gary Parrish to break everything down at the start of the season. First of all, Gary, by the way, off-season, hit the recruiting trail pretty hard?
Oh, me? Yes, it was LeBron camp, Las Vegas, L.A., Portland. So a busy little July recruiting period, but it's good to be able to go out and see these guys because it gives you an opportunity to write about them somewhat intelligently before they ever even step on campus.
And so much about college basketball always revolving around the freshmen. All right, Gary, let's talk about a couple of teams that have already got underway. Let's start with Duke playing this week, getting ready. And they've had a couple of games already. But one guy who you're used to seeing in the starting lineup is no longer there, Greg Paulus. Good or bad?
You know, I think from a basketball standpoint, it's probably the right decision. I mean, Nolan Smith is more athletic. He's got more physical tools, probably makes Duke a better team defensively, and then it also allows Duke to bring a shooter off the bench in Greg Paulus. But from a chemistry standpoint, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it could be wrong. Because, look, when you take a kid who's been starting for 3 years, 95 of 103 possible games, Greg Paulus was the starter. They won 80% of their games in that time, and suddenly going into his senior year, when he's the captain, he's demoted. Now, Paulus is a good soldier. He's going to say all the right things. He's said the right things, and he'll continue to do that. But this bothers him. There's no way it doesn't, because labels, matter to college basketball players. And either you're a starter or you're not a starter. And when you've been a starter, it's one thing to have never been a starter, but when you've been one for 3 years, then your senior year, which is in theory supposed to be your best, you're taken from the starting lineup, and he'll hear about it from opposing fans the way he hears about everything from opposing fans. And you just wonder if he'll be able to embrace that role the way everybody hopes that he'll do it, because again, it's a guy who's had to deal with a lot of ridicule throughout the years, and the one group of people that's always had his back, per se, has been that coaching staff. They've always stood beside him and said, look, Greg Paulus is our point guard. He's good enough to be our point guard. And then this move suggests that maybe they don't believe that anymore. And so it's got to be a lot on him, although, to this day, he's still saying the right things.
Well, it'll be very satisfying for Greg Paulus and Duke if the Blue Devils can overcome North Carolina somehow, despite the fact nobody believes they can. Let's talk about UNC for a sec. They haven't gotten underway just yet, but Tyler Hansbrough, the biggest story in the offseason in terms of a guy not playing, what's the status on him?
Still hasn't practiced. Probably won't play against Penn Saturday. In fact, I can't imagine any scenario under which he would play. I mean, he hasn't practiced in the month of November. The big one's Tuesday night against Kentucky. You got a possible Patrick Patterson, Tyler Hansbrough matchup, national television, and, will he be available for that game? I don't know that if you're Roy Williams, you risk it, because there's no game that can be played in November that's going to matter in March or April. So if he doesn't get back on the court, say, Wednesday, Thursday, or even as late as Friday, I can't imagine that they'd throw him out there on Tuesday. But and to this day he hasn't practiced, so not optimistic. I'd put it as questionable to doubtful for Tuesday against Kentucky, and almost certainly out against Penn on Saturday.
Gary, not like they need to, but just hypothetical. If Tyler Hansbrough is out for an extended period of time, or let's say they were to lose him at some point during this season, where do you put North Carolina then?
I would still probably, and let's take him off the table. And again, I don't think that's going to be the case. But take him off the table, I still think they're probably the smart pick to win the ACC. If you think of it in these terms, they'd still have a great point guard in Ty Lawson, a great shooting guard in Wayne Ellington, a pretty good wing, an NBA caliber, might get drafted wing in Danny Green, a pretty good power forward, and then you with some experience, and you would throw in a McDonald's All-American into the front court with them, either Tyler Zeller or Ed Davis. So. I mean, how many teams can match that just in terms of sheer talent? Not many. Duke would probably get the edge, I guess, based on the experience, and they're pretty talented as well. But if you took Tyler Hansbrough off the table and still picked North Carolina to win the ACC, you wouldn't be making a bad decision there. It's perfectly reasonable.
Gary, what about the team, real quickly, favored to win the SEC? That's Tennessee. What's the problem right now in Knoxville?
Well, they lose Jordan Howe, the one-point guard last year, graduated. Raymar Smith was dismissed. But it's all supposed to be fine because they brought in a freshman named Daniel West. J.P. Prince would be back, and Bobby Mays, a JUCO transfer, would be there. Now J.P. Prince is out with a shoulder. Daniel West ruled ineligible. Tennessee, SEC favorites heading into the season with one point guard, and he's an erratic, a talented guy, but a guy who had to basically be pushed out of Oklahoma after his freshman year because Jeff Capel just couldn't deal with him anymore. It'll be interesting to see. As fast as Tennessee plays, they need depth at that position, and they're going to start the season with absolutely none.
All right, Gary, we all know the early part of college basketball about the tournaments. What's the first couple of preseason tournaments you're looking forward to?
Well, the games, I mean, you got one Wednesday night, UMass and Southern Illinois playing for the right to go to New York in the Coaches versus Cancer. UMass and SCU are two teams that don't get an opportunity to play the Dukes and the UCLAs on neutral floors. They'll have that opportunity to win this game, so it's important for them. And then, the really good matchups start next Tuesday night. As I mentioned, Kentucky at UNC, the other one, Davidson at Oklahoma. There's some All-American caliber players in every one of those games. So hang tight, and I think Tuesday will really get going.
Should be a lot of fun to see all those games. And then the tournaments get underway. They come to the Garden. UCLA Duke should be a good one as well next week. Gary Parrish, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, folks, don't forget to read everything from Gary here on CBSSports.com. For our resident college basketball columnist, I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care.